This video will be covering the process of, instead of just simply varnishing mahogany and teak, actually doing a epoxy base layer with West Systems 207B and 105B epoxy resin. Basically, I picked up a Thistle, I believe around 1960, 1966 Thistle, some really nice mahogany. Condition was good, but of course the varnish on it was, chipping and degrading, and the wood was black in some areas. The mahogany had turned black where the actual varnish had come off. So this mahogany you see here comes from the front grating of the new Thistle. There are a few extra base pieces too that I did yesterday as test samples. But the purpose here is instead of laying up a lot of varnish, which eventually gets brittle, yellows, and falls off, you actually do a really nice base coat with epoxy. And the 207 Special Clear Hardener does have some UV inhibitors, but on their website they do recommend putting a varnish over the top or some kind of finish that has additional UV inhibitors. I already had the pump because I had the pump for the 105 with this slow hardener. So that's a special pump. I believe the ratio is 3-to-1. Had checked the website to make sure, but I believe it's 3-to-1 for the special clear hardener, and then it's 5-to-1, but I'm not 100% accurate. The pumps do it for you automatically, so it's just one pump from each can. And then I mix it into a little plastic container. I use one of the West Systems plastic spatulas or sticks. I found these are better than the wood ones. They seem to create less air bubbles too, and they're easier to clean up and last forever. And then a lot of people use brushes. I discovered using a little foam brush works perfect for the application I'm doing. And I just saturate the top of the wood with the foam brush and then drag it across really nice and slow to make sure all the bubbles get out. You're looking at coat number 2. This mahogany is coming out beautiful. I love the natural color. I believe this second one right here is actually teak. It's a little faceplate. And I noticed when I was sanding it that it was definitely a different wood. So it might be a different kind of mahogany, but I'm pretty sure it's teak. And then just to give you an idea, here's a nice piece of raw mahogany. And you can see how light the color is on that. And when you put the epoxy on, it darkens it really nicely and makes it beautiful. So I'm really happy with the color that has come out so far. And I'll show you a piece I did yesterday that I've already done some wet dry sanding on. Is this guy right here. This is one of the support members that goes underneath, and you can see it has a dull satin finish now from where I was wet sanding it. And then there's just a couple little high spots that I'll clean up a little bit later today. And then I'm going to be using some varnish that I got at West Marine to actually finish it off. So the goal is, instead of having to do 6 to 7 layers of varnish, you do a really nice high build excuse me, with epoxy resin with the special clear hardener, and you do your build. It also really strengthens the wood. You can't see it, but one of my pieces had a little crack in the back. Actually, 2 pieces had little bitty splitting in the back, and the epoxy just penetrates that splitting and will completely encapsulate the wood and keep it from shrinking or expanding. So really, really happy. This is the second coat that I've put on. I'm going to be putting on a third coat in about 2 to 3 hours. And then after that, I'll be using wet dry sandpaper to give it a mirror satin finish. And then 2 coats of varnish on top of that in the exposed sunlight areas. And that'll make it really shine. The epoxy clear actually self-levels pretty well. You could add a little bit of acetone. I'd contemplated adding some acetone to it, but I'm happy enough with that. And then I'll wet sand them when they're done. And then, as you can see, I've got them sitting on little bitty plastic supports. And I don't need to do the bottom as well. The bottoms, though, I'm just going to do 1 coat of epoxy resin because I'm not looking for the aesthetics on the bottom. And 1 coat will be fine to penetrate the mahogany and protect it from water and splitting and other issues that wood can have. And then one other item too. As I was taking the wood grates out, some of the stainless steel screws, really, really old on the boat, and some stripped easily. I found this tool over at Home Depot. Lowe's carries them as well, and it got every single strip screw out without any issues whatsoever. You just have to put a little bit of muscle behind it when you're using it. But every one of the strip screws came out really nice. And then there's the rudder from the boat. I'm actually going to be taking that, sanding it, adding a layer of glass to it, and then painting it, I believe. Just because it's a much older rudder and the wood's not quite enough show quality, though I may try to sand it later. We'll see. There's just a few spots I don't like on there, so I'll either paint it or I'll try to sand it and refinish it. And this is great to do it this way too, because you're able to do all the epoxy in one day as opposed to having to do, multiple varnish layers over the course of many days. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comment below.